Alright, so this is the tutorial on how to edit a portrait. So right now we just have our bridge open. As you can see on the photos, you just cycle through. Some have stars, others have more stars. You can either star them through the camera, or you can just add a star. As we go in here, you just see how they just show up, and you can unstar them too. But right now we're going to edit these ones. As you can see, there's a 5-star right here, so we're just going to have to open that one. It'll open up in Photoshop, but since it is a raw file, it's going to open in Camera Raw, which will allow us to pre-edit. Here it is. So as I shot the photo, I kind of wanted it more heavily exposed, overexposed. It's just the style that I like to do. Since we don't have to extract it from the background, it'll just be a whole lot easier process right now. So what I start to do is I just move the blacks up and the shadows. So that's going to overall make it like a little bit flatter. We're going to turn it down, the exposure, just a little bit, and bring down the whites and highlights. So as you can see, like from the highlights and whites are all the way down, and the shadows and blacks are all the way up, which thus gives it like more of a flat look for now. So if you look down here where it says open image, if you hold shift, see how it switches to open object. So we're just going to hold shift and click on open object. So when you hold shift and you click on open object, it makes the image into a smart object, which this as soon as it opens over here in your layers palette, it'll have like a different type of icon on the layer that's gonna allow you to open it up in Camera Raw again, so then you can make more of those same changes we just did. Okay, so if you right click on this layer, if you go down to new smart object via copy and you click on it, so that's just making a copy, but they're not linked together. If you just made a normal copy of this layer, anything that you did to one layer, it'll do to the other. So this way it breaks that link. So like you're just going to double click on that little icon right here in the bottom portion of the thumbnail. Okay, then we're going to bring down the saturation, and sometimes I bring down the blacks just a little bit. It helps add a little bit more of the contrast back to it, and this time you only have to hit OK. So when we do that, it puts this black layer, or it's a black and white layer, over top of the colored layer. If you hide it and you show it, hide it and show it. Okay, and then up here is your blending styles. So this will determine what or how this layer interacts with the bottom layer. So with this layer selected, you're going to click on normal, and you just come down to soft light. And then it adds that contrast, and it makes the image pop out a little bit and looks a bit more lifelike. I mean, if your image is a little too strong, you can turn down the opacity, but I like the way this one was. So so now I'm gonna flatten these and make a new layer, and we do this so that I can start editing on those ones, but I leave these ones just in case I want to go back and make some changes. It's non-destructive editing. So you're gonna hold down Command, hit Shift, Option, and E. So that's Shift and Command, Option, E on a Mac. And then it adds a new layer and fills it with everything that you had seen on the screen. Okay, then from here is where we can start editing. So everybody kind of has their own flow of how they like to do things, and sometimes I even deviate from my own. It just depends on the photo, but I think I'm just going to start with the skin editing right now. So we're going to zoom in, and you can see that she's got some wrinkles. We're just going to take those out, but still leave some type of, so like she's got some wrinkles already, like everyone has some wrinkles, but you still want to keep all the wrinkles, just not as much. So what we do is you hit S on the keyboard shortcut, or you can come over here and you can see what the S is. It's just the clone stamp tool. So you hit S, and then you just zoom in a little bit. I mean, not that close, but somewhere where like you can see some detail. And then when you hold option on a Mac, and then you can source what part of the skin that you want to source from. So like you can just click here, and up here is your flow. So this is going to determine how much of that it's going to take. So since it's a low flow, it's like a low transparency. If it was all the way up to 100, it'll take exactly each pixel or each skin tone from there. So if it's lower, it's going to like start to blend it like a little bit easier. So we're just going to, so you just hold Alt and you just click down, and then you can just start brushing along, and then every once in a while, like, you just hold Alt again, and you just have to sample from another place. So like, you still want to leave some of the wrinkles, just not as, just make it so that they're not as dark. Because everyone has wrinkles, it's just how dark they are is age. So you just zoom in, like you can get any type of blemish, or even like the smallest little dot show. Oops. So and then like you can make your brush smaller or bigger. So yeah, we're just gonna do this for a while. You can get in the lips. There's always some like random thing that the light had caught an edge on, so it makes it look weird. Usually there's some like horizontal lines in the forehead. And you can also do the same thing by hitting J. It's over here. It's just like the healing brush tool, and so this one's a little different, but it still does like the same effect. You still have to Alt and Alt click so that way like you can sample, but when you start to hover over what you're going to highlight, it does this, and when you let go, it then fixes. So it's a little bit smarter. Like it'll figure out what you're trying to do, and then just adhere to it. So right now, like I'm still using the healing brush tool just for some things. Each situation, it's going to call for certain tools, and you just have to pick which one works better. And like there's hairs on the edge of the chin, which you can take them off. For what we're using this for, she's not going to need that, done on her. So, but for more of like higher, more like an agent or something like that, if they're going to zoom in real close on the picture, then yeah, we would do that. I'm going to switch back to the clone stamp just to soften up the skin here. Since the flow is really low up here, as you brush over multiple things, it starts to like blur the edges a little bit more, so that you don't see as much of the skin flaws. But if you take too much out, then she starts looking like a porcelain doll where she doesn't have any texturing at all. So there's always something on the arms, even though it's blurry because it's out of focus. You can still always clean it up. That way there aren't any type of distractions. Like I'm not taking out every freckle, just the random ones that just catch my eye. We just keep editing, you can even go inside the clothes if you see anything wrong. Usually that's not a big deal. And so everything's pretty fine. Like our clothes are pretty like loose fitting, so yeah, so here's the before and after on the skin. You can kind of zoom in on the face. You just hide and show that layer. See, it's a little bit better. So on the next step, it can alter, or it can deviate from this exact workflow, but I just kind of pick what I feel like doing next. So on the next one, so like we're gonna get rid of all these flyaways in the hair. Like you can see your hair kind of got a little staticky. If you don't spray it down with hairspray or water, then it starts to do that sometimes. Some are worse than others, but hers looks pretty easy. So there's two ways you can do this. If the background's like a solid color like it is here, I mean, even though it looks solid, it's a little bit brighter in this corner than it is over here. See, it's a little brighter and like a little darker. But overall, it's still okay. But if you want to try it this way, like you just hit I for the eyedropper tool, and you just click on the background color, and then over here in the corner, it actually switches that color. Then you just hit B for brush, and then up here, like in the corner, you can like switch all your settings, you know, your flow, and then you can kind of, and then you can kind of just, if you just zoom in into the hair, you can just kind of like paint over her hair, but you can see a little bit of that line right here. There's a little bit of a line right there, like if you don't look directly at it, like if you look right here, you can kind of see it. But so I'm not going to do it that way just because of the different variants in the background, but I'm pretty much just going to do the same thing with how like how I did all the wrinkles. I just hit S for the clone stamp, and I just kind of sample out here. If you make it too big on your brush, see how it starts to like bleed into the hair. So you still want her hair to stay intact. I kind of bring the hardness up a little bit, and maybe the flow up a little bit. But you just kind of sample over here, and then you just kind of like just have to go in, you know, get a little bit smaller brush and just kind of fix all the flyaways. I mean, like, you still want some of that, of the little feathery lines throughout here, but it's really just to get rid of the, you know, the random ones that are just 3 feet off of her head. So just kind of clean this up a little bit. Just kind of go up and around. It's just really brief, and you know, just all the distraction lines. And you, as you're doing this, you want to let go of the click like a lot, because if you don't, let's say like I did all of this in one full click, and then I mess up here, then I have to undo, and it undoes that entire process that I just did. So just make sure that you're doing it.
On that, then you have to just like.
So you just kind of like click, you know, just kind of clean it up a little bit. But it just takes a little bit of practice, and after a while it just gets really quick, like, and it helps having the tablet. So you just keep going, just kind of clean up a little bit. So I mean, there's hair in her eyes and stuff, but to clean up each one of those little strands all in here, it would take away from the photo just because there's so much stuff behind there. There's all that detail in the eyes. It would just be almost near impossible to like move that, you know. That's how she wanted her hair, so we're just gonna leave it there. That's just how she was. So there's the before and after. You can kind of see, you know, the hair up top and the eyes, you know, just kind of. So next, you know, something really simple is just the teeth. Everyone kind of has like a little bit of yellow teeth, so you just kind of add a over here in the bottom, there's this half white, half black circle. It's your adjustment layers. So like you can either come down here and hit hue saturation, or you can come up here to image adjustments, and they would all be selected right here. But since I already have mine selected and on there, it's not letting me select it, but that's another way to do it. So usually I always try to do this on an adjustment layer. I always like to hold Alt/Option on a Mac and hover over the 2 layers. There's a little line right there, and when you hover over it while holding Alt, it has this little down arrow, and when you click on it, it means that this adjustment layer is only going to affect this layer. So it's not going to affect these ones. Even though you can't see these ones, I will be adding other layers on top of this, and I don't want that like to be affected by anything else. So it's just a good habit for you to get used to. So with the adjustment layer selected, you just click on the word master, and there's all these other colors. So if you want to go inside the yellow channels, you're just going to bring down that saturation, You can see how like all the yellows in the picture went really saturated, then as you bring them down they just start to go black and white. Okay, so as you add the adjustment layer, it automatically adds a mask to the adjustment layer. Okay, so white is revealing, so white will show everything. So like right now, this thing that I just did with the saturation is affecting the entire image because the entire thing is white. So I'm actually going to flip it. I'm going to fill it with black by holding down Command and hitting Delete on a Mac, and it's going to fill this with black. Okay, so that means that this isn't affecting anything, only because that black is actually masking it out altogether. Like it's just not showing it. So if you hit Brush, I mean, over here, like on your tools, there's the brush, or you can hit B. I'll come up here to my flow, just bring it up. Hardness is fine, and then I'm just going to paint where I want this hue saturation adjustment layer to be affected by. So I'm going to click on the mask and paint white where I want there to be no yellow. So when I'm doing this, okay, so now when I click and hide, see how it, like you can see how it's only affecting where I had painted. So there's before and that's after. Masks are usually hard for people to like to understand in the beginning, but they're just really simple. And you only paint black or white on a mask, and then if you have like a low transparency of white or black, it'll paint gray, which just is the transparency of those colors. So that was just a really quick one to do. It's really simple to do, so you can kind of leave it there. So then you got to click back on this layer for any other edits we're going to do. So like if you wanted to go back and fix the skin some more, if there's anything with the hair, if you saw something else, like you just click back on that one. But I think I'm pretty good so far. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another layer, and there's a few ways you can do this. In the bottom right corner there's a little button down here, and that's to add a new layer, and it does add a layer, but it's not showing us the options that I actually want it to, so I'm going to undo that. If you hit Shift and Command and you push in as in Nancy, it adds this other new layer palette, and you can name it. I don't typically name my layers. I should. It's just not a habit of mine. But on mode, you're going to click on mode and you're going to go down to soft light. By doing that, it lets you click this box. If you just go to normal, it doesn't let you click it. So we're going to go to soft light and we're going to click this box. This box is going to fill the entire layer with this gray neutral color. And then since it's already on soft light, which is right up here, as you hit OK, it's not going to show anything. It's just going to show what we're seeing now. But it's there. But since it's on soft light and it's gray, it's a neutral value, so it's not affecting any of the brights or the darks. Okay, so for this, we're gonna hold down Option and hover over, and we're only gonna have this affect this layer, even though it's on top of this one too, but it's still going down to the root layer, which is this. So with this selected, on this step, we're going to use. If you hit O, it shows the dodge and burn tool, and O is for all of those, but if you just hit O, it's automatically just going to go to the last one you used. So with the burn tool, makes your darks darker, and the dodge tool makes your brights brighter. So right now we're just going to add contrast where we want contrast. So I usually start with the dark, so I use burn, and I try to stay off the face as much as possible until the end, and I usually start on the close, like somewhere around like in the midsection, just so like I can get a feel for each photo. But if you see a shadow, you just kind of paint over that same shadow. So right now, like I'm just going over. I'm just trying to make the shadow stand out a little bit more. As you can see, like right up against her arm, there's light and then dark and then a little bit of light. So we're just going to paint where there's that dark right there. And you make the brush a little smaller for the smaller creases. But right now we're just adding depth into the photo by increasing the shadows and increasing the highlights. This part usually takes the longest. It just depends on how really detailed you want to get. So yeah, it's just like a more of an artistic thing. You just kind of have to watch what you're doing and see what would look good. Probably not too dark. On the hair, most women, like if they have longer hair, it'll be streaky. So they'll be like dark, light, dark, light. So you just gotta be careful that you're only getting those values that are actually there. Like there should be a shadow here, so we're just gonna make that a little bit darker. Just kind of avoid the bright spots for now until we get to the other tool. And then once you get most of the clothes and the hair and stuff, I usually save the face for last, and I always start with the eyes. So I usually add eyeliner, and it just helps the eyes pop out. But you just get a really small brush and you zoom in, and you just keep pushing down along the eyeliner, the eye line. Even though that you're doing it on the eyelashes, it still shows up. Then you go around the actual eye here, and then inside the black of the eye, I just make that a little bit darker. If you want to, like a really surreal effect, you can go in and like shade all the darks and stuff inside the color of the eye. But we're trying to get more of like a natural look here that's been enhanced, but it just looks like a overall good photo. So we're just gonna add this and then just keep pushing down. So this is one push. This is another, that's another, that's another. So as you push down like in the same spot, it'll build that darkness up. So like if it's not working for the first push you do it, you just got to keep doing it. Usually I don't do the face, but here's what it would look like if you did. It adds like a lot of that darkness to it. Sometimes it's good. It takes a lot of practice, and I tend not to do the face too much or at all. If anything, I'll use the dodge tool on it only to brighten it up. But this photo is already pretty bright. But you can get inside the mouth, make that depth in there a little bit, just overall deeper. You just want to avoid the teeth. You can get inside here on the ears and their pearls. Okay, so when we zoom out, you can see the before of all the darks. You can see how much, just how much more like sort of HDR this will look. And then when you add the, so then we're gonna, like you can either paint just on top of this next one, with the dodge tool. You can either just go right on top of this, or you can add another layer. As you add another layer, like for the burn tool and for the dodge tool, I have those on two separate layers, but I usually just do them on one. It's been fine so far. So I just kind of go over the edges. So like on the brighter one, on the dodge tool, I usually do like a little bit bigger strokes on the circle, on your brush tool, and then you just kind of like paint over the brighter spots. Just more of like in a broad range of what you're doing. And then you can come in on the teeth. If you make the teeth too bright, then it, obviously it'll look fake. But you just kind of make them a little bit brighter. Like you can do the whites of the eyes a little bit brighter. Get that. I'm going to go back to the burn tool here. Just kind of make this a little bit darker. Yeah. And you can flip back and forth if you need to. Like if after you did the dodge tool or the burn tool needed to go back, it's fine. You can go back. It's just going to paint over what you already had done. Okay, so that's pretty much overall like done for the dodge and burns. You can see the before and after. Like right here, you know, if you look right off the shoulder, I did get onto the background, which you can see only if I did the before and after. But you can't tell that much. But if it really bugs you, you can add another mask onto that one. You know, just paint black. You can just kind of bring down your flow a little bit and just kind of paint over that edge there so that it hides what you had done there. Show it again, see if you did it. There's another one right here. Hide and show. There's some down here. Yeah, it just depends on what you want to be okay with. Okay, so at the very end, you just kind of zoom out, and then I do the Shift Command Alt E, so it adds another layer of everything that you've done, but all in one layer. So if I hide and show this, it's the exact same thing. It's just a lot easier to control when it's all in one layer. So okay, so now we're gonna add the detail. So we had just done the Command Shift Alt E, all in one layer. So if you just come up here to Filter and then Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, it brings up this other palette, which has the preview button. I would always, always check that so like you can see what you're doing. This like already setting is probably from another photo that I have done, but I don't want it to do that much, so we're gonna bring it down a little bit. You can kind of zoom in and see what it's like you can see how much detail. So this is before and this would be after. It just makes it a lot sharper and a lot clearer. So then you just mess around with those. I mean, it's usually like in this same range. The amount's a little bit more than the radius. I don't really put on threshold. You just kind of hit OK. And that's pretty much it, other than adding a vignette. And inside, I usually add my vignettes inside Lightroom, just because it's just a little slider bar that I can just click and drag. Or if I'm editing multiple photos that day, I'll save them all for one step, and then I'll just import them all into Lightroom, add the vignette with the slider bar, so that way like they're all the same and it's very consistent. Or you can add it in here too. It's fine, either way that you feel comfortable doing it. But yeah, like for this photo, that's all I would do. So we would just save it out. Just gonna put it on the desktop for now. I forgot her name, so we're just gonna call her assistant. Oh, her name is Emily. So I usually save it as a Photoshop file for one working file, so that you can always go back. So if she has any changes, you can come back into your working file and you can make those changes.